Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chen and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are continuing with the reading of Guardian, Volume 1, also known as Zhenhun by Priest, and we're covering chapters 7 through 9 today, so I hope you all enjoy. Chapter 7. Right here. Rewind it. After parting ways with Changcheng, Zhao Yunlan drove back to 4 Bright Avenue. Once there, he headed straight in and watched the security footage from the intersection outside DCU's main entrance 3 times, start to finish. By daylight, the office looked far bleaker. The only person on duty in the criminal investigation unit was a female officer who might have been in her 20s. A simple ponytail highlighted her pretty forehead and a clear complexion that was accentuated with light makeup. She was in uniform, at least from the waist up. Her lower body was covered by a blanket, and she sat very still in her seat. All that kept her from looking like she was convalescing was the rosiness in her face. Half-closed eyes and a lazy expression made it seem like she might drift off any moment, but her hands were working busily. The blanket on her lap was large enough that one edge reached the floor. When Zhao Yunlan accidentally stepped on the trailing edge, the other side of the blanket slid up. For a moment, it revealed the tip of a python tail, which quickly withdrew. The woman's attention remained fixed on the security footage. Without looking, she reached down absent-mindedly to adjust the blanket. The nameplate on the corner of her desk read, Zhu Hong. The security footage wasn't very clear. Some sort of magnetic field had caused interference, so the recording stopped and started erratically, and sometimes bursts of static obscured the video. What could be seen wasn't terribly revealing, since the murder had taken place in the small alley by the school's side entrance, and the camera was filming the intersection outside the main gate. It only caught the brief moment when Qian and the victim, Loo Row-uh-may, had passed each other on University Street. The footage timestamp put it at 10:20 p.m. the previous night. Things played out just as Qian had described. She left the school and crossed the road to a small supermarket, went inside, and came out after 5 minutes. On her way back, she happened to cross paths with Loo Row-uh-may, at whom she nodded politely. At Zhao Yunlan's request, the footage was now paused just moments later. Loo Row-uh-may had crossed the street and was about to enter the alleyway. Qian seemed to glance casually at Loo Row-uh-may. The poor quality of the video made it hard to see nuances in her expression, but what she'd seen in that glance had sent her reeling, staggering back in shock. Zhu Hong stared at the screen for a while, and then her eyes finally came fully open. The pupils in those otherwise ordinary almond eyes were inhuman vertical slits. The effect was deeply unsettling. Is she looking at what's under the street light? Zhao Yunlan nodded. Can you make the area around the street light any clearer? Zhu Hong zoomed in, but it didn't do much. No, I've tried my best. In a few days, I'll send you to start a part-time graduate degree. Go upgrade your technical skills. Zhu Hong patted her lap, what would have been a human woman's thigh. That would take at least 2 or 3 years, and I'm like this once a month. How exactly would I explain being absent so often? Without hesitation or batting an eye, Zhao Yunlan said, You tell them it was menstrual cramps, dumbass. She absorbed this in brief silence, then said, You're always destroying my romanticized fantasy of you, boss. You're the one who has the nerve to fantasize about your boss. Zhao Yunlan lightly pushed down on her head. Are you trying to lose your bonus? Her eyes narrowed even more. A long serpentine tongue flicked out between her lips. If you take me to bed for just 1 night, you can stop paying me entirely. I'll work for free. Zhao Yunlan gave her an artificial smile. Really? Zhu Hong was silent again, struck by the feeling that their shameless boss might really be capable of selling his body for profit. Propositioning your boss during work hours. Zhao Yunlan pointed at her. Very good, Comrade Zhu Hong. You'll be our department's representative to the party seminar this year. Get ready to work on your thinking and awareness. Wishing she'd shut her mouth sooner, Zhu Hong hastily tried to move on. If whatever's there isn't visible on the footage, it must not want to be seen, except by someone with a third eye. That girl was probably only able to see it because she'd used the Reincarnation Dial. You managed to find something about that old sundial? Zhao Yunlan asked. Mm-hmm. Actually, when you mentioned the old sundial this afternoon, it made me think of something. She bent over and took an old thread-bound account book from a drawer. I borrowed this from the Netherworld. You can take a good look at it when you have time. Legend has it that the first of the hallowed artifacts from the Netherworld is called the Reincarnation Dial. Its base was made from shards of the 3 life rock, and the scales on its back were from a kind of blackfish found in the Wang River. The 3 fish are 3 chi, 3 kun long. Their fins are hard as crystal and all point in the same direction. Footnote number 12. 1 chi is 33.33 centimeters, and 1 kun is 1/10 of a chi, or 3.33 centimeters. Back to the reading. Zhao Yunlan nodded for her to continue. Zhu Hong flipped the account book open. Only the so-called 4 hallowed artifacts of the Netherworld, including the Reincarnation Dial, are mentioned in here. It doesn't explain where they came from or what became of them. But based on recent events, it seems like they've ended up in the mortal realm. Her tapered fingers slid across the page, and Zhao Yunlan's gaze followed. Under the words Reincarnation Dial, he saw a little note in a small font that said, Life Lending. Life Lending? Zhao Yunlan's brows creased as the unusual new ghost following Li Qian came to mind. What did you find out about Li Qian? Did anyone around her die recently? Someone who hasn't yet passed their first 7 days? Yes, Zhu Hong said. Li Qian's grandma passed away at the end of August. Zhao Yunlan leaned back and slowly lit a cigarette. That must be it. No wonder the old lady's soul can appear in broad daylight if the 3 life rock is blocking her soul's passage. I wonder why that girl was spewing lies, but borrowing life from the elderly? How could she do such a thing? No, that's not it, said Zhu Hong. The Reincarnation Dial represents the sun rising in the morning and setting in the evening. Just like how the scales of the black fish in the Wang River only lie in one direction, it's only possible for an older person to borrow time from someone younger, not the other way around. Director Zhao, I think you've misunderstood her. Zhu Hong reached out a hand. Out of nowhere, a piece of rice paper drifted down and landed in her palm. Li Qian's name was written on it, followed by her birth chart in smaller text, and then 2 blurry lines. It was hard to make out what exactly was written there, but it was clear that the words had somehow been changed. The Netherland looked into it for me, she said. Li Qian's date of death was altered, yes, but her lifespan wasn't lengthened. It was shortened. Zhao Yunlan arched an eyebrow, mildly surprised. Reincarnation Dial, Reincarnation Dial, thrice around the Stone of 3. Half your life for half of mine, born apart but die intertwined, Zhu Hong recited, then continued. It means someone with the hallowed reincarnation artifact can use it to exchange half of their own remaining life to bring back someone who's already dead. After that, when one of them dies, so does the other. 2 years ago, Li Qian's grandma was coming to the end of her life. That was most likely when the girl used half of her own life to bring her back. After you called, I dug into her background. Li Qian's address is registered locally, but before that, she and her grandma lived in the countryside. I called the local village officials, and they told me Li Qian was raised by her grandma. Her parents were always busy with work out of town and never really went back. And what's more, Li Qian has a younger brother. This was all back when the one-child policy was at its strictest. So, you know. In a family that valued sons and daughters, where the parents desperately wanted a son but didn't want to pay the fine for exceeding the birth limit, the daughter they already had became invisible. Everyone pretended she didn't exist. Zhu Hong continued. The village had said the old lady had a sudden stroke 2 years ago. No one thought she'd make it. But she had a miraculous recovery, just with some side effects. She was later diagnosed with Alzheimer's, what used to be called elderly dementia. I think it was probably caused by nerve damage from the stroke. At first, she was just forgetful, but it kept getting worse. She began to have trouble recognizing faces, and her intellectual capacity declined. Then, 6 months later, Qian was accepted into her master's program here in the city. Her parents had no choice but to bring the aging grandmother and their kid here. So, this life for life probably happened when Qian's grandma was sick. Zhao Yunlan flicked his cigarette. Somewhere back in her hometown, she came across that ancient heirloom passed down through the generations. It all adds up, but I don't see why she can't talk about it. Why does she need to lie to me? Perhaps there were extenuating circumstances. Zhu Hong spun her chair around with her wrist on the armrest, split-pupiled gaze coming to rest on Zhao Yunlan. The frightening eyes of a cold-blooded creature somehow seemed unusually warm and gentle on her face. Think about it. If there were someone in this world you loved enough that you'd sacrifice half your life for theirs, how would you feel if they then started vanishing from your life again? Zhao Yunlan's forehead creased. He seemed unmoved, as if still unconvinced. In the face of such a heart-rending story, he was not only untouched, but examining it for cracks, as if he wouldn't rest until he found something suspicious. Zhu Hong had to wonder which of them was the real cold-blooded one. She sighed quietly. With a shrug, Zhao Yunlan said, "Okay, Miss Zhu, lay it out for me." Qian did a lot of online shopping. I've looked through her purchase history. Almost all the things she bought were health products for the elderly. She didn't have a lot of money to spare, and most of it was earned through tutoring or helping her advisor. Other girls spend far more than that on clothes or makeup, but she rarely bought anything for herself. That alone makes me think she's a good kid. If it's clear that she has nothing to do with the case and she doesn't want to talk about some things, then just leave her be. Don't keep pushing her. Material goods don't prove anything, Zhao Yunlan countered. Sometimes you buy things to make up for not caring for someone anymore. He trailed off at Zhu Hong's expression, which said, "You cold-blooded, heartless man," as clearly as any words. "Fine," he said. "Let's pretend it happened like that. But if she gave half of her life to the old lady, why is she still walking around while the old lady's dead?" In a situation like this, it's possible that an accident happened. The old lady may have passed even though her lifespan wasn't up, said Zhu Hong. Ling sent me the list of spirits that went missing yesterday. I checked. She's not on it. She's just floating around out there, and it's very likely the netherworld doesn't even know yet. If her soul is connected to a living human through the Reincarnation Dial, that might be how she got past the Reapers. Zhao Yunlan considered that. What is it? Zhu Hong asked. I just had a thought. I don't know if you noticed, but Qian and Loo Row-uh-may have a very similar build at first glance. Similar hairstyles, too. If a stranger saw them from behind, it'd be almost impossible to tell them apart. Then yesterday, they happened to be dressed the same way, and Loo Row-uh-may just happened to die after they crossed paths. Think about it. There must still be some trace of a hollowed artifact on Qian from the Reincarnation Dial, and if the grandmother really can evade the Reapers, maybe the escaped ghosts think... You're saying that hunger ghosts might have been after Li Qian all along. Zhao Yunlan put out his cigarette and grabbed his cell phone from his pocket. It's almost dark, and I only left our new useless little thing there with Li Qian. I have to get over there. The intern who fainted from fright on his first day? Zhao Yunlan gave her an exasperated look, not wanting to discuss it. He was about to leave when he remembered something. Oh, right. Where's the message from the soul-executing emissary? Give it to me. Zhu Hong tilted her chin toward the corner of the desk, too afraid to touch what he was asking for. It was a small pamphlet. The outside was pitch black, and the words, "To the hands of the guardian, a lone soul sends notice," written in cinnabar. The interior was an exquisite satin. It opened with a few lines of polite but wordy pleasantries, then briefly mentioned the hunger ghost's escape before finally getting to its main point. Tonight at midnight, this one will pay you a visit. Deepest apologies for the disruption. The whole message was written in neat calligraphy with long, slender strokes. It was practically a work of art. Zhao Yunlan flipped open the letter. Frightened, Zhu Hong edged her chair away. The soul-executing emissary had come into existence in the depths of the netherworld, but he was not a ghost immortal, nor was he subject to the 10 Yanluo courts. Footnote 13. There are 10 courts in the netherworld, each controlled by a king. Together they are known as the 10 kings of the Yanluo courts, and they judge the souls that have died. Returning to the reading. Legend said he had originally been a mere wisp of fiendish energy from the darkest bowels of the 9 hells. But from this inauspicious beginning, in a rare stroke of serendipity, he evolved to attain a physical form. He wielded the soul-executing blade, and gods, humans, or any other being, whether from the 33 levels of heaven above or the 18 levels of hell below, could be executed by that blade if found guilty. Deities and demons alike bowed their heads to him, and all beings feared him. All but Zhao Yunlan. Whether he was thick-skinned or bone-headed, or just missing reflex tendons others had, Zhao Yunlan not only failed to fear the emissary, but found him gentle and refined with a good personality. Footnote number 14 about reflex tendons. It is an idiom, shao gen ji, indicating someone is obtuse or not attuned to subtlety. Returning to the reading. His only shortcoming was that, whether speaking or writing, the emissary's language was just a bit archaic, too refined and flowery. Zhao Yunlan could tell Zhu Hong was uneasy, so he quickly skimmed the lone soul's notice and stuffed it into his bag. If there's nothing else, you can go home. Leave everything for Wang on the night shift. Now, you won't have legs again for a few days. You could slip down just hitting the brakes, and it's inconvenient for you to go anywhere. So, once you leave work, try not to fuck around. Make sure to get some rest. And oh, right, reach out to Ling Jing for me before you go. If he's finished up what the netherworld wanted him to do, tell him not to have too much fun and get back quickly. What is there to do in the netherworld anyway? As soon as Zhu Hong heard that she didn't need to stay behind and greet the soul-executing emissary, she nodded as if a weight had lifted. I'm heading out then. Zhao Yunlan strode out, dialing Changcheng's number. When Changcheng realized it was his boss calling, he instinctively stood at attention. Why did it take you so long to pick up? Zhao Yunlan was already worrying. Is everything okay over there? Changcheng was too tongue-tied to speak. It was weird. That morning, he'd managed to speak directly to his kind-seeming boss, but now that Zhao Yunlan was speaking through a phone, that bravery was reduced to crumbs. As with many socially awkward individuals, he found phone calls far more terrifying than speaking face-to-face. His breathing came faster and faster until Zhao Yunlan started to think answering the phone could frighten him into a heart attack. After listening to a minute of breathless stammering, Director Zhao sighed. Is anyone there with you? If so, give them the phone. And if not, give it to Da Qing. Changcheng silently handed the phone to Shun Way. Fortunately, Shen Laoshi was reliable. He offered Zhao Yunlan a concise explanation of how they'd taken Li Qian to the hospital, including the hospital name and room number. Then he asked, "What? Is Li Qian's situation still—" Crackly static cut him off mid-sentence. "Hello?" It sounded like Zhao Yunlan had said something, but Shun Wei couldn't make out a single word through the static. He went to the window, seemingly in search of a better signal, but where Changcheng couldn't see, he gently opened the curtain to look out. Still showing every sign of being confused, he said, "What was that? Hello? Can you still hear me?" This time, Zhao Yunlan heard him clearly and had just enough time to snap out, "Fuck! Get out of there! Right now!" Shun Wei reflexively narrowed his eyes as a black shadow darted across the reflection of his night-black pupils. In the next moment, the room was plunged into absolute darkness. The glass next to Shun Wei shattered, and Zhao Yunlan's cat let out a sharp yowl and jumped up. A gust of wind blew past the side of Shun Wei's face, leaving a foul stench in its wake, something that reeked of decay with the pungency of blood. Zhao Yunlan seemed to have said something else, but it was unintelligible. Utter chaos broke out in the room. The cat was still yowling over the noise of things crashing into each other. Then a loud clash rang out as something flew through the air and slammed into a chair, knocking it over. Shun Wei backed up half a step to get out of the way, and the call dropped entirely. He maximized the phone's brightness and shined the light around. An unfamiliar voice called, "Be careful!" It was Jing who had knocked the chair over, and he was the one speaking now. Poor panicked Changcheng had managed to trip over the toppled chair and had landed on his backside with his limbs in the air. Shun Wei reached behind himself into the corner of the room and found a mop. Grabbing it, he thrust the wooden handle forward while swiftly leaning back. With a teeth-grating crash, the black shadow flew over his head at great speed. There was a sudden weight on the mop as the handle was chopped in two. The black shape flitted past, as quick and silent as if it were really nothing but a shadow. It was too fast to make out clearly, and it headed straight for Li Qian, who was still lying on the bed and completely unaware of any of this, thanks to the sedative. By now, their vision was adjusting to the darkness. In the cell phone's dim light, Shun Wei got a good look. The thing's mouth gaped wider than 90 degrees, giving its head the appearance of a sliced open watermelon. Changcheng didn't even have time to pass out. He could only stare, eyes huge and mouth hanging open. His heart rate hadn't even picked up, but his mind had gone blank as a whiteboard. His blood all rushed to his extremities, and his skyrocketing blood pressure made his head feel as if it had doubled in size. There was only a voice inside, wildly yelling, "What is that? What is that?" The shadow was revealed to have a human shape. Its long body and stick-like limbs resembled a skeleton's, but it had a massive belly that bulged out terrifyingly. Its arms had become a pair of large sickles. As it roared soundlessly, they slashed down ruthlessly toward Li Qian's abdomen. Belatedly, Changcheng's scream found its way out of his throat. He gave 3 shrieks in quick succession. "Ah! Ah! Ah!" Shun Wei's expression darkened as he took a brisk step forward. But before he could act, a human figure was subtly interposed between the shadow and Li Qian. It was an old woman who had appeared out of nowhere. She was stocky, with a laughable fake hair bun perched on her head. After materializing out of thin air, she flung her arms as wide as possible, her round body stretched out like a clumsy old hen as she desperately tried to shield the girl on the bed. Quick as lightning, Shun Wei stepped back as if he hadn't moved. No one noticed as he hefted the metal chair that Jing had knocked over and hurled it at the shadow. The chair smashed directly into the shadow's body, ripping it in half. The creature let out what sounded like a scream of rage. The split halves of its body were still connected by something resembling sticky strands of lotus root, hanging to the side and swaying. Then bubbles of all sizes began to form at those points of connection, as though it were a pot about to boil over. Like a monster from a persistent nightmare, the 2 halves shook violently. Horrifying noises came from its mouth as its halves started to fuse into one. It's growing back together! It's growing back together again!" Changcheng yelled pointlessly. He was either adding to the chaos or, well, adding to the chaos. Shun Wei had no choice but to retrieve the chair from where it had ricocheted off the headboard, then brandish it fiercely at the monster. The mild-mannered Shun Lao-shi, it turned out, was anything but mild when it came to fighting. Accuracy, steadiness, fierceness, he possessed them all in spades. While everyone around him was still frozen in fear and unsure what to do, he'd already gained the upper hand, striking first and smashing the thing into 7 or 8 pieces. Finally, face unflushed and breathing unaffected, he tossed the chair aside. Silence reigned in the room for 2 full seconds. Then Jing sprang to the head of Li Qian's bed. Whiskers quivering, he said, "Don't just stand there. Hurry up and go. You can't beat a hunger ghost to death with a chair. You were lucky just now because the room's full of yang energy. Once you've really angered this thing, it won't be fun." Shun Wei looked up. He and the cat had a brief stare down. "That's right. You're not hallucinating," Jing said, expression solemn. "I am the one talking, and you really did just batter a hunger ghost to pieces, so don't give me any bullshit about how one does not speak of the supernatural. Get moving." Whether it was due to mental fortitude or something else, Jing hadn't even finished talking before Shun Wei bent down and hoisted Li Qian onto his back. Valiantly, he even asked, "What about that old lady just now?" "She'll follow. You don't need to worry about her. She's a new ghost, not a living person." "Oh," Shun Wei said, and put atheism behind him. "Officer Xiaoguo, keep up." Changcheng was still gawking, his neck stiff as he contorted himself into an awkward shape. Shun Wei, carrying Li Qian, raised his voice sharply. "Officer Xiaoguo!" Struggling to get his limbs under him, Changcheng got up as if he'd just woken from a dream. Enough with the eyes! Open the door for me!" By this point, Changcheng's brain was fried from sheer overload, so he was only capable of obeying. At Shun Wei's order, he stumbled to push the room's door open. There wasn't a single thread of light in the hallway outside. The doctors and nurses on duty seemed to have evaporated from the mortal world. Every single room was empty. The whole floor had become a ghost town. The cat raced ahead, more nimbly than one might imagine for his size. Shun Wei followed, carrying Li Qian, leaving Changcheng no choice but to bring up the rear. Their footsteps echoed all around the empty hallway. A window might have been left open somewhere, because there was a constant eerie breeze blowing around them. It chilled the back of Changcheng's neck and slowly woke his brain from its state of frozen terror. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something behind him. Chapter 8. Feeling or no feeling, Changcheng didn't dare turn around. Having been raised by the elderly for much of his life, he had been fed a lot of superstitious beliefs, including the common one that said to never look back when walking at night. Doing so would extinguish the lamp on each shoulder, and then monsters would come to get you. He was doing his best to keep himself under control, but the scene that had just played out was still vivid in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more petrified he became, as if that thing were about to catch up to him. It didn't look like lamps on his shoulders would keep it at bay. With a belly so engorged it looked pregnant, and arms like a mantis pincers. Changcheng touched his neck. With a head as delicate as his, the thing could decapitate 5 of him at once without breaking a sweat. His brain then replayed the image of the corpse in that narrow alley. Changcheng hadn't seen the actual scene of the crime, but from photos, he knew how it had looked. That young woman on the ground, her abdomen cut open. "Look back. Don't look back. Look back." Changcheng wiped away cold sweat and found himself walking faster. He quickly caught up with Shun Wei, who had Li Qian on his back. Changcheng had never been a confrontational person. For him, running away was as natural as a cat eating fish or a dog eating meat. It was practically part of his genetic makeup, and right now, his genes were telling him that the safest place was between Shun Wei and the black cat. Bringing up the rear was way too scary. But at that moment, Shun Wei suddenly stopped walking. Li Qian seemed to have stirred, but she hadn't woken up completely, so she started sliding down his shoulders. He had to stop to adjust his hold on her. Guo Changcheng could have overtaken him, but for some reason, he instead came to a halt. In addition to not rushing ahead, he maintained his forward-facing position. Stiffly, without turning his head, he twisted his body sideways to take a quick glance back, then leaned against the wall. It was a kind of protective, alert pose for the sake of the people in front of him. Guo Changcheng had finally remembered something. I'm a police officer, he said to himself. I'm a police officer. I'm a police officer. I'm a police officer. He kept repeating it in his head, looping it again and again like he was a voice recorder, as if enough repetition would give him some sense of honor and courage. Unfortunately, the words, I'm a police officer, weren't enough to ward off evil. It accomplished nothing but wasting his breath. He was still on the verge of losing his mind from fear. As he silently chanted, his vision began to blur. He belatedly put a hand to his face an instant before meeting Shun Wei's shocked gaze, which was how Guo Changcheng realized he had actually started crying. Was it any surprise that Shun Wei was shocked? An hour earlier, Shen Lao-shi had still been an ordinary university professor. But in the course of that hour, he had witnessed such bizarre things firsthand: a murderous black shadow, a talking cat, and a police officer who had been reduced to tears right in front of him. The truth was, Guo Changcheng himself didn't fully understand why he was crying. But then came the swift and unexpected realization that crying was the best possible option for venting his emotions and lessening his fear. It was certainly more useful than endlessly repeating, I'm a police officer. Taking a deep breath, he began to wail in earnest. But with the wailing came brave words. Hurry up and run! I'll bring up the rear! I'll protect you guys! Shen Lao-shi said nothing. It seemed very probable that he was numb from everything he'd seen, and that was why a hint of a smile flickered in his eyes. Maintaining their peculiar formation, the black cat rushed to the stairs and raced down toward the first floor. The two men with the unconscious girl were right behind him. Shun Wei was still holding Guo Changcheng's phone to use as a flashlight. And, as they ran, its light swept across the corner of the stairwell. Before Shun Wei could make out what that light had revealed, an inhuman scream exploded out of Guo Changcheng. Even running flat out, Guo Changcheng was fully capable of screaming and crying. Clearly, despite the fact that he was a recluse, Officer Xiao Guo's lung capacity was excellent. Shen Wei took a closer look. What lay in the corner was a child, but no, it was more accurately a fetus, a tiny thing even smaller than a newborn baby, probably premature. Beneath the sparse hair on its scalp, its head was like a squashed ball, broken open in places to reveal the ruin of its skull and brain. Its features were crooked, and its empty mouth agape. It lay there quietly, like a medical specimen staring at them with warped, vacant pupils. "What are you screaming for?" Ching admonished loudly. "This is a hospital. Of course it's packed full of yin energy. There are plenty more where this one came from. Don't act like some country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world." What is that?" Guo Changcheng managed. "A little ghost of a fetus that was aborted before it was born." Ching swiped at the tiny ghost. It vanished, letting out a cry like that of a kitten. "Get moving! The hunger ghost is right behind us!" In a previous life, Ching must have been a doom-saying crow, not a cat. His words were still hanging in the air when that rotten stench hit Guo Changcheng and Shun Wei's noses. They both picked up the pace. While talking, they'd made it from the second floor inpatient area to the first floor, only to hear pounding footsteps behind them. "What now?" Guo Changcheng asked tearfully, his head somehow unusually clear. "Isn't the hunger ghost like a shadow? How can it have such heavy footsteps?" "I already fucking said. This is a hospital. There are all kinds of things here. The cycle of life and death plays out here every day. Not to mention the impurities of all kinds," Ching yelled. "Also, are you discriminating against overweight people? We fatties aren't thieves. We don't go around taking advantage of others. What's wrong with being overweight? Being overweight is fine." Shun Wei had lost count of how many times he'd been left speechless that night. He couldn't begin to imagine what Zhao Yunlan's work environment was like with employees like these. Despite having someone on his back, Shun Wei didn't seem tired at all. He was still breathing easily. Now, seeing that the cat was about to explode, he could only coax. "Come now, you two, don't fight. Where's the exit, kitty?" Da Qing's explosion was undeterred. "Don't call me something so stupid, mortal!" "Divine cat." Shen Wei smoothly switched gears. "It would appear we've been down this hallway already. Might the divine cat have some wisdom to share?" Da Qing slammed on his brakes, coming to a stop so abrupt that Shun Wei nearly stepped on him. Only a frantic sidestep prevented it. Changcheng, meanwhile, slumped against the wall like a dead dog, hyperventilating and letting out the occasional tearful hiccup. Da Qing's ears pricked up as he tilted his flat face to the side. In the cell phone's dim light, his feline eyes glowed eerily. After some consideration, he turned back and calmly said, "We've been going in circles." This time, the heavy footsteps approached from up ahead. Something seemed to be squirming inside the blurry shadows on the wall. On closer inspection, it was dozens of intertwined humanoid shadows locked in constant writhing struggle. They screamed soundlessly, ripping and biting at one another, but eternally joined. In this place, lives came to bitter ends every single day. Those who had lived those lives could only wander its corridors aimlessly, unable to leave. They were consumed by envy for the living, greedy for the scent of life, but unable to approach. Such resentment, such despair. "Run!" Da Qing felt like he'd been yelling the same instruction constantly throughout the evening. All he needed was a starting pistol, and he'd be ready to officiate a track meet. The three humans and the cat managed to stumble into a small storage room. Changcheng, the last one inside, slammed the door shut as if his life depended on it. He plastered his entire body against the rusty-smelling door, holding it closed until the lock clicked. Only then did he finally have time to snort back the snot bubble that had escaped along with his tears, unable to believe he was really still alive. He just felt a ghostly hand on his neck, and the dark chill of the touch seemed to linger. Shun Wei set Qian down to the side and hurried to join him. Between them, they moved all kinds of things in front of the door as a makeshift barricade. But before they could even catch their breaths, there was a forceful impact against the door from the other side. The clang was loud enough to drive Changcheng to his knees. There were 2 or 3 more powerful blows, and then silence. Until there came the sound of sharp nails scratching at the metal door. Changcheng had slid all the way down the door, but he was so startled by the noise that he flung himself away as if electrocuted, goosebumps rising all over his skin. Crying, he turned to Shun Wei. "I haven't even gotten my first month's salary yet. Can't I at least see the money I won't even get to spend before I die?" Thinking it would be somewhat impolite to laugh under the circumstances, Shun Wei adjusted his glasses to hide his amusement. Changcheng kept sobbing. "Shen, do you have any unfulfilled wishes?" Perhaps hoping to ease Changcheng's terror, Shun Wei gave the question careful consideration before nodding. "I do." Through tears, Changcheng choked out. "Like what?" "There is someone I met only by chance. There are no connections between us. To him, I must only be a stranger with whom he's exchanged a few words." Shun Wei spoke gently against the background noise of scratching nails. "But I very much want to see him one more time." Chapter 9. The man was maybe 30 years old. A guy with an average build, wearing wide-framed glasses and a string of sandalwood Buddhist prayer beads. Once out of his car, the first thing he did was fish his phone out of his pocket, turn on the camera, and aim it at his own face with the hospital in frame behind him. There in the darkness, he began recording. "Special mission, September 1st, 20XX, 9:23 p.m., Baota Road East, Dongcheng District, Dragon City 2nd Hospital," he muttered. "Mission executor, Ling. Over." A black SUV screeched up behind him. Zhao Yunlan tore off his seatbelt and leaped out. "Unclock your brain and follow me quickly. We're up to our ears in trouble, and you're standing around taking selfies?" "Oh." said the man called Jing. How the hell did I land myself in this situation? Zhao Yunlan seethed. Why is my entire team made up of non-humans and dumbasses? The whole hospital was shrouded in a black haze, and its immediate vicinity was deserted. None of the bustling passers-by on Baota Road East even seemed to see it. Zhao Yunlan dialed Changcheng and Shen Wei's numbers, neither of which were in service. Cursing to himself, he kicked the front door of the hospital open. Black fog rushed toward him as he intruded, but he barely broke stride even as he drew a palm-sized dagger from under his pant leg, sidestepped, and slashed the shadow in two. More black shadows came racing out of the hospital. Jing, right on Zhao Yunlan's heels, pulled out a gun and started firing, picking them off without a single wasted shot or a hitch in the Buddhist scriptures flowing off his tongue. Is there something seriously unlucky about our useless newbie's birth chart? Zhao Yunlan looked at all the shadows clogging the hallway. It was like entering a drain pipe blocked with hair. At the school, he attracted a resentful spirit, and now he's attracting ghosts at a hospital. If you dropped him into investiture of the gods, he'd just be a soul beckoning flag. Footnote 15. In the classic Chinese novel Investiture of the Gods, written in the late 1500s and early 1600s, a soul-dispatching flag was used in battle. The reverse, a soul-beckoning flag, would assumedly draw souls in. Continuing with the reading. Form in emptiness, Jing recited. Then he said, I'll conduct a ritual for him later. Form my ass! Either speak normally or shut up. Serenely, Jing continued with his recitations. Emptiness in form. Fuck your mother's second uncle, Zhao Yunlan snarled. Footnote 16. Jing is reciting part of the Heart Sutra, one of the more well-known sutras in the practice of Buddhism. The sutra discusses the practice of wisdom beyond studying rules, but because the character for form, se, is sometimes used for discussing sex, one humorous reinterpretation is lust is a hollow goal. Back to the reading. Fuck your mother's second uncle, Zhao Yunlan snarled. After a moment of silence, Jing pleaded sincerely. Boss, my mother's second uncle has long since passed, so please forsake these empty forms of wrath and lust. Zhao Yunlan had nothing to say in response. His loathing for work could be blamed directly on having people like this as his co-workers. With a deep breath, he tucked his little dagger between his teeth and took out a yellow paper talisman and his lighter. Holding the talisman aloft, he lit it. The tiny flame immediately swelled to a ravenous blaze. One shadow was sucked in before it could escape. The flame, having fed on a dead spirit, reached a meter in height and surged down the corridor, swallowing the countless little ghosts that didn't manage to escape. It crashed through like a dragon of flame, consuming everything in its path with the force of a gas explosion. Amitabha, our Buddha is merciful, Jing murmured. Zhao Yunlan's expression was dark. Enough already. In less than a minute, nothing remained but a pea-sized flame at the end of the hall, as if the towering inferno had been an illusion as ephemeral as fireworks. Zhao Yunlan strode over, bent down, and lit a cigarette with the tiny flame. Cigarette between his lips, he beckoned to Jing and pushed open the door in front of him. They headed deeper inside. Meanwhile, the trio taking refuge in the storage room were unaware that salvation was close at hand. As the scratching at the door grew sharper and more frantic, so did Changcheng's breathing. He was teetering on the edge of a breakdown. Shun Way could only ignore him. Looking down at the cat, he asked, What should we do now? Da Ting was plainly a cat wise in the ways of the world. Calmly, he answered, I'm sure your call told Director Zhao enough about the situation. No need to worry. We just have to hold out a little longer until he comes to save us. Shun Wei frowned. By himself? Is that safe? How will he get in? That was the part the professor focused on? Da Ting's tail gave a tired swish. Don't worry. He's got thick skin and tough flesh. A handful of puny little ghosts won't be able to chew through him. Leaning against the wall, Shun Wei thought about it. Can't we figure out a way to save ourselves? Jing glanced up at him, a little confused. This Shen Laoshe was far too calm. How? He began to list off what they had to work with. A mortal, useless trash, someone sedated to the gills, and me, a mascot. Even if the four of us offered ourselves up to a steamer basket, do you think we'd be more than an appetizer for the hunger ghost? Shakily, Changcheng asked, Didn't Shen Laoshe smash it into pieces with that chair earlier? Earlier it was famished and desperate to feed, so it didn't watch its back, Jing said impatiently. You two are young men, so you have strong yang energy. That weakened it enough for you to get the upper hand. But with the overabundance of yin energy in this hospital, it'll be like it chugged several cases of energy drinks while chasing us. It could even be suffering from overnourishment by now. Oh, fuck! Another one? The cat was cut off by a child's shrill laughter coming from the corner. Shun Wei looked over and saw a small girl around 5 or 6 years old with a sickly, pale complexion. She was squatting on the floor, letting out creepy peals of laughter as she merrily grabbed at the black cat's tail. Before Shun Wei could check to see whether this little ghost had a monstrous face and oversized fangs, a sudden weight settled against his legs. Changcheng was wrapped around them like a koala. Save me! The young officer, who had moments ago vowed to protect Shun Wei, was now holding on for dear life. He was shaking, his face a puddle of snot and tears, but was still able to yell something he'd been holding in all day. Ghost! There's a ghost! The little ghost had died young enough that her intellect hadn't been fully developed. The mere sight of people was a thrill, and this was a tremendously entertaining development. She let go of Jing at once and giddily floated over to Changcheng, finding this bear-hugging man highly interesting. When Changcheng cracked his eyes open and risked a peek down, the girl stuck out her tongue and rolled her eyes back. With her face still tilted upward, her head spun 360 degrees on her neck, leaving it dangling in midair while still connected perilously to her body. Changcheng's eyes rolled back into his skull a full 3 times, but he gasped for half a minute without managing to pass out. He seemed to take Shun Wei for a real tree, hugging his legs tightly and attempting to climb. A scream arose from the pit of his stomach. Ghost! Ah! Shun Wei sighed and held on to the waistband of his pants to keep Changcheng from dragging them down and costing him his dignity. He even managed to see the strange humor of the situation, caught between a hunger ghost clawing at the door behind him and a little ghost girl dangling her head in front of him. By the time Yunlan was only a dozen meters from the hospital, his watch, Clarity, looked like it had been dyed with blood. The watch's hands deviated from their usual course and started spinning wildly, like a compass needle. But no matter how it tried, it couldn't settle on anything. The sheer number of impurities was interfering too badly. Hey, fake monk, my stupid watch is acting up again, Yunlan yelled to Ling. If you've got any tricks, hurry up and use them. We've got people waiting for us to save their lives. Jing promptly sat cross-legged on the floor. Closing his eyes, he started counting his Buddhist prayer beads. His lips moved steadily as he recited scriptures for all the world like an old monk meditating. Then his eyes snapped back open. Got it! The sandalwood beads in his hand rustled. Face blank, he stood and pointed in one direction, every inch the confident charlatan. This way! Yunlan immediately headed in that direction. How come you were so fast this time? Behind him, Jing spoke in his unique leisurely way. They're both young men, so their yang energy is naturally abundant. Even with Jing's black hat yin energy with them, they stand out from this place's ocean of raging yin energy. Yunlan froze. Only 2 men? What about the girl? There's a girl? Oh, then she's not with him. Yunlan frowned. It was hard for him to say what Changcheng would do in this situation, but Da Qing was there. Lazy and gluttonous the cat might be, but he still had some professional ethics. Besides, Shen Laoshe was with them. That's not possible, he replied reflexively. There's no way Shun Wei would leave a student behind. They had only met by chance, but he was certain Shun Wei wasn't the sort of coward who'd abandon his student. Who's Shun Wei? Ling Jing asked. Isn't the new kid's last name Gwoh? Zhao Yunlan couldn't be bothered to explain. No one you know. Ling Jing said. The last time you brushed me off like this, you were dressed up like a suave asshole going off to see the prettiest girl at your university. Every time you get stingy with details and hide something, it means you've definitely met a beauty. Will you at least tell me if this Shun Wei is a man or a woman? Amitabha, form is emptiness, Zhao Yunlan threw back at him darkly. Ling Jing had nothing to say to that. Zhao Yunlan entered the dark, narrow hallway and held up his lighter to survey his surroundings. The hallways branched in all directions, like the deathly silent maze of a trapdoor spider nest. Why did Ling Jing think Li Qian wasn't with Shun Wei and the others? Had they really had a reason to leave the girl behind, or did they only think they'd brought her along with them? At that moment, in a corner of the storage room, Li Qian's eyes opened. Well, certainly a lot has happened, obviously. A lot. And it's honestly taken me some time to digest it, I guess. So I feel like I'm not really going to have a lot to offer you guys because it's a lot, And, okay, I'm just going to try my best. So I guess we'll start with Zhao Yunlan and Ling Jing entering the scene or whatever. Very interesting. We have a new character. Don't know how I feel about him yet. But we'll just see. And let's see. I guess I'll just go from the top of my notes to the bottom. So first, I want to go to page 117 through 118 and this is about Shun Wei. It struck me weird the way it was worded. I'm going to reread again, like the very bottom, where it says, it sounded like Zhao Yunlan had said something, but Shun Wei couldn't make out a single word through the static. He went to the window, seemingly in search of a better signal, but where Changcheng couldn't see, he gently opened the curtain to look out. Still showing every sign of being confused, he said, what was that? Hello, can you still hear me? So I just thought that was worded weird, and I'm wondering, is there more to Shun Wei? Which obviously there is, but what more is there to Shun Wei that we don't know? Because as Da Qing mentioned, and I think maybe Zhao Yunlan did as well, Shun Wei is just a little bit too calm for everything he's been exposed to. And considering that it said he went to the window seemingly in search, blah, 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 and when Changcheng couldn't see, he was just looking out. So he was looking out as if he knew something was coming. And then it said, still showing every sign of being confused. And just having it worded like that makes me think, okay, he wasn't really confused, just showing that he was confused, pretending to be confused. So I guess we'll just, see where that goes or where it doesn't go. Can't really say anything else about it, but I found it interesting. If you did too, just like the wording of that, let me know. Do you have any thoughts? What do you think? Then, going to page 125, this is about Changcheng, which I've already said it before, but I'm just going to say it again. I like his character. I want his character to stay. Because on page 125, he had the realization that crying was the best possible option for venting his emotions and lessening his fear. And I just give him 100% kudos, because when things happen to us that are traumatizing, in whatever way that they may be traumatizing, we oftentimes may tell ourselves, depending on our upbringing, that we're not allowed to process the trauma, basically. You know, whether we got to stay hush hush about something, or, you know, suck it up and get over it, or, you know, just other things like that. We're often told that we can't acknowledge those feelings, or even if we do, we're told how to deal with them, you know. And there are a lot of people in this world who are emotionally constipated because of those types of teachings, you know. So I just think it was lovely that he actually went ahead and let himself cry and get himself scream and do what he needed to do until they got to the closet. And then, well, that was another story. I totally agree with it, because, like, on a personal note, within the last 30 days, I'm still on one. I've had 3 cycles. 3 menstrual cycles, and I've been trying to be positive during each one, but they've all been absolute hell with my adenomyosis. And today has just not been a good day, and I've wanted to yell and scream and punch someone and eat ice cream and yell at strangers. Have I done those things? Absolutely not, but I'll handle it in a different way. But I'm like, it's okay for me to be upset. It's okay if I decide to be bitchy during my cycle, which normally is not something I do, because, don't get me wrong, I know that hormones mess up things sometimes, but sometimes I feel like women just make it an excuse to be mean and bitchy. I've never been that kind of person, but having 3 cycles in 1 month, oh, you bet your ass. So I'm with Gwoh Changcheng. Cry your heart out, scream your heart out, climb on Shun Way like he's a tree, and don't pass out. Just please don't pass out. That's all I ask of you. Changcheng. So the last thing I guess I'll say is, man, I feel like I would probably enjoy this more as a show. And yes, before anyone says anything, I know it's a show, but I mean accurate. I haven't watched it, but because we know how things work with May, accurately depicted, not censored or anything like that. So yeah, not to say I'm not enjoying it. Like, as I read a little more and a little more, I enjoy it just a little more and a little more, but still not a lot. I'm wondering the moment where, if there will be a moment where I just absolutely fall in love, or when I'm at least like super entertained. We'll see. Nevertheless, there was a lot that has happened in these last few chapters. I know there are some things that I'm missing that I'm not commenting on, just because it's a lot to process. And so, like, even I have to go back and listen to my own recording to see if there are some things that I may have missed, which happens a lot, by the way, because I'm reading out loud, and I don't process as well reading out loud versus reading in my head. So some of the thoughts that I share with you guys, I have more thoughts when I go back and re-listen. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed these 3 chapters, and I will see you all next time. So, 我爱你们.